Hey everybody, it's me, Mark Husson, and I want to talk to you today about something that is one of my most precious things about astrology, and it's the rising sign. So I'm going to start off by, and this is an introduction really to the houses of the zodiac, but I'll explain that in a minute. So the rising sign is an interesting phenomenon, and it has to do with how we present ourselves to the world. Now, before I get into it, I want you to picture a giant railroad track, like, a roller coaster track, right? And just picture that it circles the earth. Just picture that. And in each section of between each of the ties that go across, I want you to imagine that that's the width of a zodiac sign. Just pretend with me for a minute. And this big track circles the earth, and it's moving, and each one of those sections is a zodiac sign, and it's moving around the earth. Think of this at about one sign every 2 hours. Okay. Now picture you're on the earth and you're seeing this big track go around, and you're seeing each of the zodiac signs like slowly rising on the horizon, right? And at one point during that time, when you take your first breath as a baby, when life is brought into you, we freeze the map of the zodiac, and we have this thing like where it was on the horizon is your rising sign. So we have this, one of the zodiac signs got cut right there. Boom. We froze it. And that's your rising sign. Now, visually, this image behind me, I'm going to see if we can get a zoom in there. There we go. See where my finger's pointing? That area right there, that's the rising sign area. That's the 9 o'clock position of the zodiac chart. So there's so much you can play with here, but I want you basically to understand this is the mask you wear. And if you know your time of birth, this is why time is so important for the accuracy of a horoscope or an astrology chart, really, is because when you take that breath, when we have your time of birth, we freeze space. We freeze that band going around the sun. Now, if you don't have your time, that part we work with, and I'll explain that later. It's not important right now. It doesn't mean you can't have a true astrology chart. There's ways to get that as well. But it does, the time does help us know exactly accurately what was on the horizon when you took your first breath, because that's all we care about right now. What constellation was on the horizon? And why do we care about that? Because it is what we present to the world. It is what in my opinion, it is the number one cause of divorce in the world. It is the number one cause of people falling out of love. It is the number one cause for the phrase, you aren't the person I met years ago. You aren't the person I married, right? So that's the importance of the rising sign. Now, I want you to picture that you're home alone, nobody's around, and you've got some great music. Like this amazing song came on, one you love to dance to, and you're dancing and you're letting your hair down. You're having a ball, right? And all of a sudden the doorbell rings. So you have to assemble something of yourself because you've let go, and you have to open the door. So you have a presentation you want to make. How you make that presentation basically is going to tell us your rising sign. It's really kind of interesting. And there's all these little rules around the rising sign, and I want to get into it. We're going to go sign by sign. We're going to talk to you about what the presentation is, and then we'll go a little deeper later on how you use it. Okay? So when you first meet somebody, you're meeting the rising sign. You're not meeting their sun sign unless their sun sign happens to be the same as the rising sign. You're meeting one of 12 every 2 hours that went through one of the 12 signs that were on the grid where it froze when you took your breath. We're meeting that. So when you meet somebody and they happen to be, let's start, Aries Rising, right? There, we're going to see somebody that's likely very assertive, very energetic, very in your face, unafraid, has all the inspiration of Aries, and that's who you're meeting. Now, I just want to say something. Let's pretend that Aries Rising is really a Scorpio, brooding and quiet and maybe not so energetic, maybe someone who lurks below the surface. You're not seeing any of that because you have an Aries Rising in your face. Well, when does it change? Through intimacy. And a lot of it changes based on the type of sign is rising. So for example, Aries is a pretty fast sign. Get out of my way, right? Get to know an Aries over time, that Scorpio is going to come out, all right? And it's also going to come out depending on how safe you make that person feel. So if you're another Aries and you're excited and you love their spunk, well, maybe there's a little anxiety in them because deep down inside they know my spunk, that's my presentation. That's not all who I am, right? And so like as you get to know them, the Scorpio comes out. Now the person who was loving that Aries and loving that person who's climbing mountains with them is suddenly like, wait a minute, you're upset about what? I said what? And this other part emerges that you didn't know about. This is the importance of astrology, in my opinion. One of the biggest things. If you know somebody's chart, you know you're meeting, even if you don't know their chart, you know you're meeting the rising sign. You know that's who they're presenting to you. It's what we do. We want to present that first because I want some control over who you get to meet and when you get to meet me. It's not that it isn't you. It's definitely a part of you, but it isn't the essence of you. And I think that's really important. So if you're an Aries rising, a couple of little tips of the trade. If you know where your personal Mars is, what sign it's in, that's going to affect how you present yourself, okay? So a person who's in Aries, but they have Mars in Virgo, very different presentation than a person who's in Aries with Mars, say, in Capricorn, okay? Well, and you don't have to understand that now, but that's the nuance. That's the difference. When you know two Aries risings and they're so different, that's why. We'll get into that later. Next one, Taurus is Venus ruled, remember. So these people, and remember, Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So when you're fixed earth, it's not very movable. You don't move. So there's a grace to them. There's a charm to them that you come to them. They don't go to you, basically. There's a comfort in their tone. They have a way they can comfort you. They have a way of sort of seeing the good in you, using that Venus energy to present to you. And who knows what lurks underneath that, right? Who knows? It could be a Gemini under there. It could be another Taurus. It could be a Capricorn. The sun sign is a completely different animal than the rising sign. So presentation here, grace, slower, a certain kind of elegance, a certain kind of comfortableness, a certain kind of ease, earthiness. Look for that in the Taurus risings. And you can also look for prominent neck features, like with Aries rising. I didn't mention prominent forehead features. See, the rising sign and the sun sign and the moon sign will all give us these characteristics, but the rising sign, that presentation, ooh, it's hard to beat how powerful that is. That's why the rising, the moon, and the sun are considered the trilogy of astrology. Those are the three things almost every astrologer and every neo-astrologer likes to look for, right? People who are playing in astrology that like know those three things. Do you know your rising? Do you know your moon? Okay. So wherever that person, Taurus rising's Venus is going to distinctly color how they're presenting to you. But the general characteristics, earthy, a prominent neck or a prominent voice, look for things like that. The ability to comfort you, to be responsive to flattery, responsive to things, okay? Solid, often big bodies, like solid bodies, grounded bodies, okay? So we can play with this more. I want to give you some examples. And I actually wanted to bring examples of celebrities with the different rising signs, but sometimes I think it's just basic, too much information. Let's go through them. We'll go do it a little verbally, and then we'll bring in some fun characteristics of people with rising signs that I think you might enjoy to associate with. Gemini rising, okay, if you're a Gemini rising, you're Mercury ruled, you're a chatterer. You're probably very talkative. You probably enjoy people. You have a twinkle in your eye. You're light. You're easy. You're really youthful. And depending on where your Mercury is now, your ruler of your chart is Mercury. And so if your Mercury's in Capricorn, you may not be as chatty as, say, a Gemini with Mercury in Sag, but you will likely at least have some things to say. You're good in a crowd. You're good at meeting people. You have no trouble making any kind of small talk. And if depending on your setup, you may not like doing that, but you know how to do it. You know how to move people, you know how to connect to people, you know how to listen. It's very light and easy energy. And imagine if you met a Gemini and behind the scenes is a Capricorn sun sign, somebody who's way more serious. Or you meet a Gemini and their sun sign is Aries, someone who maybe isn't as willing to be like sit down and listen, but always for the opening invitation. Now, how long does it take to get that person to show you their sun sign? Is all based on the way they feel around you, how comfortable they are. Sometimes it's months. Sometimes I've seen cases where it's years. The person just doesn't want to let go. And if inside of you, the rising sign is so dramatically different than the sun sign, you might be very leery of letting anybody in because you know the striking difference that occurs. And a lot of people struggle with that, especially when you're younger, that you know who they're going to get to meet isn't who you're presenting. And it's not your fault. It's that presentation means everything to you. That's why we pick our clothes that we're going to wear that day, and why we make up ourselves, and why we try to look our best when we go out. We want to do a good presentation. And if you happen to be someone who is getting a lot of reinforcement for your presentation, and you think the person who you are is so different from that, I understand, but you will outgrow that. You will integrate that, I promise. Okay, Cancer risings. Remember, Cancer is a water sign. It's cardinal water. They're emotional. They usually have big watery eyes. You can see it in their eyes. They might have round cheeks, okay? Because Cancers it is about lushness. It is about roundness. Often Cancers fight their weight. There's no question about it. But there's an emotional tone to this Cancer rising. They know how to listen. They know how to nurture. They know how to present as a caring and kind person. They are too. It's not that they're just presenting and they aren't those things. They do strive for those things and they have access to them. But if the sun sign is so different from that, like an Aquarius sun sign with a Cancer rising, you are going to see somebody completely different once you get to know them. And it can be startling. So it's good to be aware of. So this Cancer rising can be very outwardly caring, like you first kind of caring. And as you get to know them, you meet this other person, they may not be that way. So that's why it's nice that Cancer risings know how to move that energy. They're probably very funny. They probably know how to get you laughing, know how to get you crying, know how to make you feel guilty. But as you get to know them, the power of that wanes and you get to see who they really are. All right, getting an idea of the rising signs. So we're moving the wheel like a big clock, and that big constellation comes up, and you were born with Leo rising. Woo! Okay, Leo rising, fixed fire. You know how to present. You're royal. It's very regal. It's a lot of people confuse Leo with dramatic and animated. Leo risings are kind of like fixed sign, like Taurus and like Scorpio and like Aquarius. Leo risings are like, you come and see me. Like it's you to me. I don't move this energy. Like I'm fixed fire. I bring warmth to the place. I know how to light up a room. I know how to read a room, right? And depending on where your sun sign is, that's going to influence what that rising sign looks like. So if you are a Leo rising and you're walking into a room, but you're really a Scorpio, or you're really boy, that quiet stoicness or that stillness that lights up a room and smiles and is very generous might look completely different as the person gets to know you. It does, and you are really well aware of how to read a room. You know who likes you and who doesn't almost instantly. And that's part of your beautiful glow. So when you're not happy, it's hard to hide that as well. And that's also true for Cancer risings, by the way. If they're not happy, the ruler is the moon for them, it's going to spill all over the place. So Leo, the ruler is the sun. Cancer, the ruler is the moon. Both of those rulers are called luminaries. They both have to do with light, so they're both very reflective. Okay? Virgo rising. I'm doing the signs in order. So if you didn't know the order that I'm presenting them in is the basic order. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, now Leo, and now Virgo rising is also Mercury ruled like Gemini. So what we're going to have here is wherever the Mercury is going to depend on how it shows up. But Virgo risings are typically put together. There's a very critical sense of how they present. Now that presentation could be slobbery. It could look like a mismatch. But whatever it is, I can promise you it was thought out and it's deliberate. So if you're a Virgo rising, there can be a righteous energy to you where you are one step removed. Like you feel like almost like a queen, like or a king, royalty. You know that sort of like high-minded righteousness where somebody is part of Virgo rising is humble and service oriented, and you might see that in them too. Remember, it's a mutable sign, so you get a lot of variations on how it shows up. But one thing is important: the self-criticism is there, and so you might see a Virgo rising being quick to criticize you as a defense against you criticizing them. Or if you know it's a Virgo rising and you do criticize them, be ready for what comes back at you. I would never want to get in a fight with anyone with strong Virgo or Aquarius for that matter, and etc. I'll get into that as we get deeper in this. Okay, Libra rising, charming, usually very balanced looking, very attractive. They know how to be charming. Regardless of traditional beauty values, this sign knows how to bring charm and attractiveness to their space. And this Libra rising also knows how to be diplomatic and friendly and cordial and move a room. People love Libra risings. They're very social. They're very charming. They're the socialite, the person who hosts the party and goes and greets everybody. That's the rising. Underneath could be someone completely different. And that's the joy of the rising sign. That's the absolute fun of the rising sign. Now, a couple points that we'll get into, I promise, as we get deeper into this. The opposite of the rising sign will always and forever be the opposite sign of the zodiac. So, and the opposite is about how you do relationships. And we'll get into that again later. But if you're a Libra rising, Aries rules your relationship house. And you can just put together maybe a little bit about what that might look like, because I'll get into it with you later. Okay, Scorpio rising. I'm a Scorpio rising. I'll show you a lot of Scorpio risings. I remember once being told by an astrologer, you have to force yourself to smile more, because I do have an intensity to me. Scorpios have an intensity, usually dark eyes, dark hair. It doesn't mean they can't have blue eyes, but whatever it is, they're piercing. Scorpios tend to have a brooding kind of look, and they tend to be someone who you notice they're not missing a trick in the room. They might be very quiet. Now, I've met Scorpio risings who are very chatty, but again, that's a distraction kind of chatty. These are usually people who are observant and painfully shy, believe it or not. There's not a lot of pleasure for them in going out into the public world, like entering a room where there's a bunch of people. Kind of difficult for Scorpio rising. They kind of like to hide. And they don't like to be seen. They don't like to be the public spotlight at all. They can do it, and if they need to, they will, and they know how to push forward on that. But there is a brooding intensity to them. Now imagine that person is carrying a Gemini sun, and they're not that at all. They just present that way. Very interesting. You get to see that over time fade away. Now, Scorpio rising doesn't give up their rising sign very easy. You don't let that go just because you're becoming friends with somebody. Fixed rising signs, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, don't let go of that rising sign quickly. They hold on. They get to know you over time. Some of the longest lasting relationships, some of the longest entry into friendship is with a rising sign that is fixed. Okay, Sagittarius rising, Jupiter ruled. So wherever their Jupiter is going to tell us a lot about who they are. Just like wherever Pluto is in the Scorpio rising chart, whatever sign it's in their chart is going to color a little bit about how we see them. Sag, wherever their Jupiter is, Sag rising, is going to tell us about who they are. Anybody with a Sag rising, I mean, usually very long legs, a very long face, a horse-like laugh. I mean, all the traditional stereotype of horses are hysterically there. It's kind of funny and it's beautiful. I'm not making fun of it at all. I mean, those are features make for a very attractive person and very light-hearted. Someone who loves to inspire you, someone who wants to see the fire in you grow and loves when you see that in them. Now that's lighthearted, it's spiritual, it's magical. It's somebody who loves to talk about travel and actually loves to travel. But what if the sun sign of this rising sign Sag person is something a little heavier, like a Capricorn rising? It's a very different energy, or a Pisces or a Pisces sun, I'm sorry. It's a very different energy that comes through. So enjoy that Sag rising. It's fun to have them in the space. They do light up a room. All the fire sign rising signs do. They light up that room. But you remember, if you find out that their sun sign is completely different, that stuff doesn't last forever. Rising signs are meant for strangers, right? They're meant for events that we're not familiar with. If you're a Capricorn rising, there is an awkwardness to you. I've talked to Capricorn risings who go, I'm a Cap rising and I don't feel awkward. There is a self-awareness of the body that's so complete that it can make them awkward to us because they're paying such attention to it. They're comfortable in their body in a productive way. So when you're a Capricorn rising, you're presenting yourself very serious. You look way older than your age. You come across as very mature, and you are really mature for your age. But the presentation isn't necessarily who you are. So you might see Capricorn risings dressing like their dress might be old-fashioned. It might not be coordinated as well. That's what I mean about the awkwardness. They live in a certain time period, and it's older, and it's more stoic. And so for them to then go, well, what does modern look like? It's a tough thing, especially in the presentation. So when you talk to a Capricorn rising, if you meet them, talk to them about awkwardness and see if they relate at all. Their personal Saturn is probably in a sign that makes it easier for them. Okay. Aquarius rising, you've got to see rebellion here. You're going to see somebody who doesn't want to look like the norm, who doesn't want to present as a normal person, maybe fantastic hair color, or if the rest of the world has fantastic hair colors, maybe old-fashioned, same one color hair. Whatever it is, the rebellion will show up. The unusualness will show up. Anytime you have a fixed sign, that's a hard one to pop through. Long time developing that friendship, long time getting that to open and see who's underneath. But if you have access to their birth information and you know their sign, amazing. You can see what's underneath once you do get to know them. Okay. Big ideas. Aquarius risings like to use big words. They want to impress you. They sometimes will talk fantastic talk, because the more strange and outlandish it sounds, the better for them, unless you're really into strange and outlandish, and then they're going to do their normal, like I'm just everyday normal. It's kind of crazy how fun, it's crazy just how diverse Aquarius risings can be, to adjust to make sure that you're kind of surprised by who they are. Lastly, Pisces risings. This is one of the most adaptable signs of the zodiac. So you are going to get anything that looks like a person living on the street to a person living high on the hog. It is such a diverse energy. Someone who can look disheveled and gorgeous. Someone who can move the energy based on what they've been through. What's beautiful about being a Pisces rising is you can kind of tell where they've been just by how they feel, what they look like, what they're talking about, because they absorb the environment so completely. So a lot of them are happy and joyful because they're in a happy and joyful situation, or they might have just come from a very sad situation, so they'll have big round eyes that look really sad. Pisces rising is one of the most versatile of the rising signs. Underneath it, okay, we don't know. It could be any sun sign, any of the 12 sun signs. And so getting to know them isn't hard, and that facade or that exterior will melt away a lot faster as you get to know them and as they become more comfortable. Okay, how fast did we go through the rising signs? And I know there's so much more, but I wanted just to introduce them to you because I do think they're one of the most powerful tools in a rising sign. Simply substitute the sun sign in for the rising sign. So in other words, if somebody doesn't know their time of birth, if you were adopted or your hospital records are not clear, you can talk to an astrologer and they can get life events to help you narrow that in. But if you don't have it, if you don't know, if there's no way you're going to know your time of birth, just take your sun sign and put it right there as your rising sign, and you will learn so much about yourself just from that alone. I know it doesn't make sense now, but as you dive into astrology a little bit, it will. Okay? Thank you for being a part of what I do. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back soon to talk about the houses. You guys enjoy yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Take care now.